Hello, my name is Charlotte Fults, and this is my research from Research Methods 1 and 2 at the Sociology Department. My project is entitled Abortion in the Context of Public Policy. So back in September when we were deciding on topics, this is when it was prominent in the news about the Texas heartbeat bill being enacted. So this bill criminalized women who have an abortion after 6 weeks or anyone who aids in the process. So this is a big jump from Roe v. Wade, which says that women are protected to have an abortion without restrictions in the first trimester. What was also so important about this legislation is it represents the increase of restrictive state level abortion laws that have been occurring in the past decade. So my main ideas behind this project were how people advocate for restrictive abortion policies, but these policies, since they aim to decrease abortion rates, are they actually doing that? And also, how does that coincide with public health? Because if they're not benefiting women, then we should figure out how to make policies in different ways. So my purpose is to explore the impact of restrictive abortion policies on abortion rates and the percentage of those abortions that are from out of state. So I wanted to look at the out of state percentage per state to make sure that the abortion rates were kind of coinciding with the out of state percentage, because I wanted to make sure that the abortion rates were correct and that women weren't just traveling to a different state to still get the abortion. And my significance is as a sociology major, I've learned how it's important for policies to be backed up by empirical evidence. So if we are creating policies, they need to make sure that they are benefiting communities or the women that are getting abortions as well. So, and also the politicization of abortion, since abortion is so politicized, it's important to have good data to back up arguments as well. And then my last point is 1 in 3 American women will have an abortion in her lifetime. So this was from a study, a longitudinal study of a woman who has done quantitative and qualitative analysis of women who were rejected abortions. And this was kind of like a known fact that she put in there. So my review of literature, first I have the policies. So Roe v. Wade legalized abortion. Hyde Amendment restricted government funding of abortions, and there's decades since the 70s of legislation, but I just wanted to include the two that are the most important. And then my last point is abortions counted in data are those that are legally intentionally induced. So the abortion rates that I have in my data are not ones that I'm not counting illegal or any sort of other abortions, so that can affect my numbers. So for my research, I wanted to preface it with saying unintended pregnancy is a major contributor to induced abortions. So increasing access to and use of effective contraception can reduce unintended pregnancies. So this is just important to note because when I'm looking at restrictive policies, it's also important to think of other ways that we can restrict abortions from happening in the first place. And then 2 studies that kind of informed my research and my methods was this one in Ohio. So this one said that their findings stated that policies restricting abortion access in Ohio co-occur with delays to care and increasing geographic inequities. Restrictive policies do not improve reproductive health. So this study found that it had a negative impact, restrictive policies had a negative impact on women's public health. And then this next study showed that there was a statistically significant correlation or kind of impact on restrictive abortion policies on abortion rates and the abortion ratio. So that was important to inform my research before starting because I needed to know what the literature already said. Like, it's not like I am the first one to study abortion rates and restrictive abortion policies. So it was important to see if my numbers and data matched with former studies. So then my research question and hypothesis are, do restrictive policies affect the abortion rate? My hypothesis was I took from these other studies that I researched and said that the restrictive policies will slightly decrease the in-state abortion rate and will correlate with negative public health outcomes. And then the data that I used was from the CDC, and that was to determine the abortion rate. And then for my policies, I used charts from these two institutes that have legislative trackers that said, okay, all the way from the 1970s up to 2019, what were the abortion policies that were put in place per state? And then I used the CDC abortion surveillance report just for 2019. So it's important to note that this is just a snapshot in time, but it's 9 years after the restrictive policies started becoming more prominent. So my methods, my dependent is abortion rates and my percent out of state. Independent is abortion policies. So I have a list of abortion policies that were consistent from the different institutes. So ones that are important to note are the partial birth ban. So the term partial birth is not a scientific term. It has a varying meanings, but the main focus of it is that it is focused at late gestational period births post viability. So it could be 28 weeks or a variety of weeks. So, and then telemedicine ban. So this is with women who are taking the abortion pill. So this law is one that's becoming more common in the past couple of years, is saying that a physician has to be present when a woman takes the abortion pill. And then 2 trips required for abortion. So that means if a woman comes and says, I want an abortion, they're sent home for 24, 48, or 72 hours, and then they have to come back. So that just creates kind of another step to having to get an abortion. And then, yes, for my methods, I used an independent t-test and a ANOVA analysis to test the difference of abortion rate and the out-of-state percentage. Connecting with the policies. So it's important to note for these policies that most of them I used yes or no. So it's saying, do they have a gestational limit or do they not? So it's not as specific and nuanced saying, okay, these states that have a 18-week gestational limit vary compared to others. It's just, do they have one or do they not? So that's just important to note that I was looking at many different policies and not being very specific into certain policies. Excuse me. So table 1, I'll move myself over. This is comparing rates of abortion by different legal policies. So what you can see is the mean of the states is the abortion rate. So yes is they do have the restrictive policy, no is they don't have the restrictive policy. And you can see throughout these that the ones who don't have the restrictive policy have a higher mean of abortion rate. And the ones in bold, so the ones that have a p-value of less than 0.05, are significant. So that means that an ultrasound required is statistically seriously significant. And 2 trips required, telemedicine ban, Medicaid coverage, mandatory waiting period, partial birth, and parental involvement are all significant. So that means that there is a difference in means for states that do have these specific policies. And then my second table is the comparing the out-of-state percentage. And what was interesting to see is that none of these actually were statistically significant, except for the telemedicine ban. And I think what I was kind of grasped from this, and there's always further research to do, is that since telemedicine ban is one of the most recent policies, then possibly that could be, if they have the telemedicine ban, then they also have a list of other policies as well. So I'm also in the process of doing a regression analysis. And since my number of states that I'm doing is only 48 because California and Maryland don't show their abortion data, then the regression can just be a little off. But what it's showing is that the policies do not have a significant difference on the abortion rate in a correlation. So that was very important to note, and I'm going to be doing further research on that. And then my limitations. So, of course, since I'm just doing 2019, it's important to recognize the lag effects. So, let's say if a policy was enacted in the past, let's say 2017 to 2019, then it might not have affected the rates yet. And we would have to look at years, like ongoing years, do a more longitudinal study. And then also the rapidly changing legislation and nuance of policies. So there's just so many policies that are constantly happening, and in each state, they're a little bit different. So this is just so important to note since it is on a state by state basis. And as I've already said, it's only 2019 data, and I didn't explore the public health indicators. So that's what my next step of my research that I'm most interested in is understanding how does this affect women's health. And then also, it's on a state level basis, all of my data and not micro data. So, like with the Ohio study, they were recognizing which counties the abortion rates affected, and also like if there's a clinic closure, how that affects the women in the area and the delayed health. But since I'm just doing state level data, I don't have that information. So, in conclusion, there is a significant difference between states' abortion rates with certain policies. States with certain restrictive policies have a significant lower difference in their abortion rates. However, these restrictive policies did not create a significant difference for the out of state abortion percentage, except for the telemedicine ban. And then the linear regression showed that policies are not a good predictor of abortion rates. And here are my references, and that is all. Thank you.